Hello again. Welcome back to my uh uh, I don't have a good name for this yet. So I purposely came in again without a plan, just to kind of see how it goes again. I think for the first one, um where I talked about my career, I kind of had that in the back of my mind where I didn't have a plan, but I kind of knew I was just going to talk about my career. So there was a bit of plan going into it. Um, so this is once again this is to improve my communication. It's just a little exercise I'm doing, recording my voice and hopefully camera in the future. But for now, we're just doing it like this. Um, yeah. So no plan for today. Um, so I thought it'd be better to use Excalibur in Obsidian. So maybe it's easier to take some notes. Still using my mouse though. I do have a drawing tablet that I can make use of, um, which will obviously help a little more. It's easier to write stuff down, like jot stuff down, if I'm using a drawing tablet and not a not a mouse. So yeah, just to repeat what I just said. Uh, So the point of this is to try to improve my communication, just improve my talking and I guess my overall thought flow. Because I tend to stutter or not stutter. I don't really stutter, but I tend to like pause and sometimes my mind will go blank and I don't know what to say. This will happen like in meetings and in the workplace when talking to colleagues and also just in general day-to-day conversations and like friendships and relationships. So it's a problem that I seem to it keeps coming up throughout my life. So so this is an exercise to try to improve on that. And the only reason I'm recording these is that I think it's the pretty much the only way to see the improvement. I think if I just talk to myself in my room and not record, then it kind of you kind of lose that progress, and you're not seeing the progress. You're not you're not able to look back and see what you're doing wrong. Um, like you don't realize your mistakes unless you I think you record it and go back and to listen to them or watch yourself. So so that's a thing. So that's why I'm recording it. I don't know if I'm going to upload this anywhere yet. If I do, I'll start talking about that. But for now, these are just private to me. So what can we talk about? Um, okay. So as I was saying, I don't know if I should use ChatGPT. Maybe we can jot that down. We can do some notes here. Should we use ChatGPT to come up with combo topics if we are running dry? So I was about to pull up AI and maybe come up with a topic, but I think little too early for that. We're just starting out, so we should have plenty to talk about. So this will be maybe a question for future stuff when we start running out of things to say and talk about. Um, so what should we talk about today? See how long it takes me to come up with something. I guess I could talk about my like my tech stack, kind of what I do for work. In the last video, I mentioned I'm a software developer now. So specifically, I'm a full stack developer. Yeah, this is gonna be annoying. Seating is cool, but I need the drawing tablet. So I'm just gonna type. So tech stack is a full stack developer, and my tech stack on the job, or I guess what I learned. I'll just say tech stack. Tech stack. I'll just write this down and we can talk about it. So C sharp, C sharp.net, SQL, Angular, which is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or TypeScript. Same thing, pretty much. And I'll do others. Also know Python. Docker, Kubernetes. I guess Docker I'm more familiar with. Kubernetes I'm kind of still a bit fuzzy about. What else? What else? You can see my, so I'm using Visual Studio down here. I also have VS Code. SQL Server Management Studio, which is used to uh, to interact with your SQL server, your database server. Okay, so yeah, my tech stack on the job, I'm primarily use C#.net, and I guess Blazor. We could put Blazor in there. We could do Blazor as other. Blazor, and I guess I know some React. Yeah, so C#.net, React, and SQL is so these are the main stacks. This is the main stack that I learned at the coding bootcamp. We started out with pretty much just like vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We learned that, did a few things there. We did a Webpack, which is like a thing that compiles your JavaScript files and packages it up, and it's kind of, it helps you. It does a lot of like the back, like under the hood type stuff to serve the page for you. And then we moved to React, which was then we learned about React. Um, yeah, which is like a UI framework, a JavaScript framework for creating web pages, web apps. And that's the same thing as Angular. Angular actually learned on the job because at the place that I work for, they used Angular. And my first project was actually I created an app in React, and then I ported it over to like I converted it to Angular. So that was my first on the job project. So I was kind of tasked with learning Angular at the time. It's pretty cool. Now I think at the time I enjoyed React. I liked how it worked. Um, but it kind of feels like what I'm learning at the time is kind of what I'm interested in. So it's not that I like Angular more than React now, because I learned Angular, and now when I create personal projects, I pretty much just use Angular. Um, and I don't use React anymore. I know of React. I kind of remember some things, but I would have to kind of get a refresher to be able to do anything in React at this point. So I primarily use Angular, which is there's some pros and cons. There's like a lot of talk about Angular is just it's kind of clunky. There's a lot. It's a lot heavier than React, but we I think we've reached a point where that's not really true anymore. Angular is very lightweight, and there's a lot of integration that you can just add. That it's not automatically added, so you can just add it if you need it, and so it's not too heavy. It's pretty lightweight. It works for small scale stuff too. Angular is more focused for like companies and big companies, because there's just a lot more built into it. Yeah, so we did that, and then we moved at the boot camp. We moved over to the back end. React was primarily the front end focused, like JavaScript and all that, and we used Firebase. Um, I'll add Firebase to this, which is a NoSQL database service from Google. Um, we use that because that we can, without the backend, we can easily integrate Firebase. Um, while we were in the front end, we didn't know we hadn't learned any backend yet, so we kind of had to use a NoSQL option. But then when we moved to the backend, we started with C Sharp .NET. We were doing some basic APIs, some basic console applications, and then we started connecting to 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 SQL. So we opened up SSMS, and we actually did before we moved to connect to SQL, we did some exercises in SQL. There were like a couple challenges to we had some example databases, some data sets, and we had to kind of transform the data into a different table format, I guess, to a different table format to kind of view the data in a different way, like with counting or sorting or joining tables, stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that as well. And then once we were comfortable with SQL, we started connecting it to our backend, uh, and we started with we primarily use Dapper, um, which is a C sharp .NET NuGet package for connecting to your SQL Server. Um, and with Dapper, you primarily use just for the raw SQL queries. So you can write those in SSMS SQL Server Management Studio, and then just use that in your C sharp code. And then eventually on the job, they uh, I think they use more Unity framework. Um, I think again there's pros and cons to everything, but Unity framework is I think it's just it's easier to I guess standardize like a pattern more than it is with and another thing I think another reason for that is like on the job primarily you expect people to not understand SQL because there's dedicated people there's dedicated like database engineers that do all the SQL stuff because we have at on the job we primarily use SQL Server, so we have dedicated database engineers that do all the SQL stuff and optimizing. So they're expected to know more the SQL aspect, and I think as people come in, they don't really expect them to be very proficient in SQL. So I think that's another reason we use any framework. Um, on the job. So yeah, that's the tech stack that I'm primarily familiar with and comfortable with. Um, and then there's been times where on the job I think we wanted to move stuff to Blazor. Uh, I think again the idea here with Blazor personally, Blazor, I think it's very early. Even now, it's been out a couple of years and it's still very early. It's very buggy. Um, and there's a lot of things that you can't do. Blazor is basically it's like React or Angular. It's a front end framework for making web apps, but it primarily uses C Sharp and .NET, the .NET framework. So this is more um, the audience is more for people that don't know like JavaScript, TypeScript, React, Angular, stuff like that. And I think the idea there is again, you hire people sometimes people that come in they only know a language and they don't know like they're only like a backend developer. They don't know the front end stuff. So Blazor kind of helps those people kind of do stuff because they don't know the front end, so they can just continue with C Sharp, and then they can do front end with Blazor. But like I said, it's very early on, and it's very buggy, and a lot of stuff like doesn't work as well as if you just use a traditional front end framework. Um, and then Python, mainly uh, I've mainly used it for creating just like personal projects. I've done like AI stuff. I think Python is like the uh, if you want to do like AI stuff and the AI like agents, play around with AI. Like Python is the language to use. There's just more resources out there if you want to use AI. Python is just a lot. It's just used a lot more for that kind of stuff. Um, and then Docker here. Uh, so Docker has been growing in popularity. Not just Docker, but I guess the Docker containerization, um, Kubernetes, like lightweight virtualization of applications. So this involves like so traditionally you if you want to create a C sharp .NET application you kind of have to be on you kind of had to be on Windows use Visual Studio to write the application, and all the services that like you have to install the like .NET 8 or whatever framework you're using. So you need a an operating system there. You need like Windows primarily. Um, so you kind of had to be compatible. You had to be on a compatible device, a compatible system, and to run your app, you also needed like a Windows box, a Windows server to run that application. And then you would open up that if you wanna be public, you would open that up to the internet, and then people could access it that way. Um, but a big reason Docker and virtualization is growing in popularity is you don't need that anymore. So you kind of create a lightweight like OS that you install just the like absolute basic needs of your application, and then you package that up into a virtual machine, and you can install C Sharp on there. Um, you can install like all the runtime services that you need for C Sharp, uh, and you can install Node as well if you're using a front end like Angular. Like you install just the absolute necessary components, and it's a lot more lightweight. You can put this anywhere. You can have like a Linux environment that you create a bunch of these virtual machines, and you package up your application into a small like VM, and you can put it there. So that's the sometimes when you refer to Docker, that's kind of all of that is what you're referring to, and not the actual like Docker solution, because there's a lot more solutions now. There's like Podman, and there's I think even Rancher as a Rancher desktop solution that you can use for creating containers. Um, and then Docker Engine, Docker CLI, it's the command line that you use to create those images and create containers and stuff like that. So, and then within Docker, Docker Engine, you install that on Windows. You can install WSL, which is like I think like a Linux environment that you can use Docker Engine in and use all the commands and stuff. So that's Docker. And I'm still like early on learning some of that stuff, but that's been pretty cool. Um, yep. So that's kind of the tech stack that I work with. I think I'll leave that there. Again, if this goes out, thanks for tuning in on this journey to improving my communication. So we'll see how this turns out as we move forward. So thanks again. Catch y'all later.